Okay, in this tutorial, I'm going to cover two things. I'm going to cover recruitment of units, and then I'm going to cover the reinforcement pool, which I think will be pretty beneficial to many of you because I did not find it intuitive. It was not obvious to me how that thing worked at all until I read the Civil War II forums and did some testing myself. But I can tell you the Civil War II forums are amazing for information. And I would tell you that most of the information that's in my tutorials I gathered from those forums, so I do not claim it to be my own. Just pass it on the information so that this game can be a little bit easier for some of you to play. So first, recruitment. How does recruitment work? There's really three different ways that a unit makes its way onto the strategic map. Number one, which is the easiest way to understand at least, is through kind of historical events. So for example, up at Strasbourg, we got the Strasbourg militia. This just populated on its own. We didn't do anything to make that happen. It just happened. Okay. Over here, Price's army. His army just happened. It popped up in Fayetteville because of an event involving St. Louis and Missouri, and it's kind of breaking away from the Union. And then other like McCullough's army over here, he populated at Little Rock, and then eventually was available for use. So you'll have those kind of events where these units will pop up and then over time will be available for use. A good example here is at Fort Coffee. We have the Choctaws that will at some point be available for use, but they're currently locked through this red slash, which essentially means that you cannot use this unit as it currently stands. A little bit easier way to differentiate is that if you have a brown slash, that basically means that unit's being currently built because I chose to build it. I selected it in my recruitment foray and plunked it down here into Florence, South Carolina, and it is now being currently built and will be completed at some point. So the brown means it's static because we can't use it yet. Also, as you notice on the strategic map, it's red with the lock, which again means you cannot use it yet, but does not necessarily mean that you will not be able to use it at some point. South Carolina State Guard, populated on its own, can't use it. So that's one way that a unit makes its way onto the strategic map. A second way that it makes its way onto the strategic map is through a manual purchasing by you. So you can either access this through the gear tab up here at the top left, or as you can see there, it says F11. So if we push F11, this will give you available all the available units that you can purchase this turn. Now, this 121 represents the total number of cards available for you to purchase. This is denoted by the top left here. So this infantry brigade, this infantry Virginia brigade that's worth 200 power, which is significant, there's 5 of those available. See, in force pool, there's 5. So we can purchase 5 of these cards before it's totally depleted. Same thing over here, infantry brigade in Tennessee. You can purchase 5 of these cards until it's depleted. And these ironclads, notice you can buy 2 of these ironclads, 1 of these ironclads. These are probably all the same in terms of stats and costs. They just can be purchased in different locations on the map, which I'll get to in a moment. Notice here when I hover over this, we can build it in Richmond. But when I hover over this, we can't build that in Richmond. I'll explain that in a second. So that's what this top number right here, 5, means. The one right below it is the power number for that particular unit. And what it will always do is it'll show you the most powerful unit from left to right. So right now we have all unit types selected, but you can also narrow it down. So if you know you want a cavalry unit, by the way, then you go to cavalry, click that, and then from left to right, strongest cavalry unit to weakest will be available for you. The entire force pool available to the Confederacy. And we can purchase 6 of these cards before it's depleted, 6 of these cards before it's depleted, and so on. Just like in my unit tutorial, if you've watched that, if you notice when you click the card, the number of elements available in that card will show up. So going back to that infantry unit really quick here, notice the reason why its power is so high is because it's got a boatload of elements in it. All right here, it's got, I hate when it does that, so sometimes it won't stay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then, so it's got 9 elements in there. 6 infantry elements, 1 light artillery element, a field artillery element, and a cavalry element. That is a lot of elements. So that's something you're going to have to consider before buying it, which I'm going to talk about in the reinforcement pool. But for right now, just understand that if you want to recruit a unit, you push the F11 tab and it goes and it pulls up this menu for you. Now, one thing to note for recruitment, you can only recruit units in the states that they hail from. So remember that ironclad, how it could be built in Richmond, but then we went like to the left and it couldn't be built. This one right here can't be built in Richmond. That's because hovering over it, notice it says Confederate Ironclad NC, North Carolina. We can only build that in a North Carolinian harbor somewhere, wherever that may be. Really? Right there? No, I doubt that. So for, say, artillery, say we want some artillery up in Virginia, but we want 6-pounders. The right tab here will sort by region. So Virginia is considered mid-Atlantic. So we'll go to Virginia, mid-Atlantic, looking at only artillery. And the only artillery we can build in Virginia is horse artillery, 12-pounders, these Columbiad artillery, which are pretty considerable, I believe. I think these are 20-pounders, not sure. They're at least 12. And then these siege artillery. But we can't build any 6-pounders. So we have to find out where we can purchase 6-pounders. So I know where, but if just to cheat, if you go to all and then just cycle through all the artillery you can purchase in the Confederacy, eventually you will find 6-pounders. In this case, Texas, Louisiana, or South Carolina. So if you notice for the South Carolinian unit card, these are the places that we can build that at. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to build this in somewhere like Florence, like we're actually doing here. I'm building 2 artillery pieces in Florence. And then once they're ready to be moved, we'll ship them by rail up to Virginia. So again, even though you can select all the different unit cards that you want to purchase, be aware that you're limited in where you can place them. And it's pretty easy to figure out if you just look down next to what kind of unit it is in the brackets, it'll say the state. So TN for Tennessee, AR for Arkansas, Texas, that sort of thing. And if you need a little bit of help of figuring out where that is, if you turn off the recruitment tab and hit number 5, hotkey 5, it'll show you all the states. So if I want to build some troops in Texas, I can hit 5 and it'll show me everywhere in Texas I may be able to build it. And then it'll pick a city where you can build those troops at. So if we go here and go to Texas, there's all the places you can build your infantry, and really any unit for that matter, in Texas. But you can't build any Arkansas units in Texas because it's not Arkansas. So then you got to go find Arkansas, which is up here, and then do that. So now one strategy tip that I've heard work out pretty well, especially for the Confederacy, spend a lot of your money initially on your border states like Missouri and Tennessee and so forth, because if the Union takes Missouri or they move in and take Tennessee, the units that you've recruited won't disappear unless they're destroyed. So what you can do is you can pull them back, and now you have the advantage of troops from Missouri and Tennessee and Arkansas fighting for you that you wouldn't have if you had waited. So instead of recruiting a lot of troops from Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina first, maybe you want to put a lot of your resources initially into like Missouri, Tennessee, some of the states that you think you may lose early, so you can get benefit from those troops, so that you don't run into a situation where you have a lot of demand but you don't have a lot of supply for troops. Because again, notice you can only recruit so many of each card. Missouri, we can recruit up to 4 more of these 61 powered infantry brigades, which consist of a line infantry, a conscript line infantry, and a cavalry element. But once we burn through that 4, we're not going to be able to probably build any more Missouri troops, at least for a while. And so later in the war, say in like 63, if you've done a pretty good job recruiting troops and not losing them, you may find yourself in a situation where you just can't recruit troops anymore because you pulled them all from like Georgia and South Carolina and so forth, and you've lost Missouri, Tennessee, and maybe Arkansas and can't recruit troops from there anymore because you've lost it. So that's just a little bit of a strategy tip. So again, to summarize here really quick, this left side will allow you to sort by unit type. And then this right side allow you to sort by region. So if we want cavalry for Virginia, we go to the cavalry tab and we hit Mid-Atlantic, and then boom, there's 2 more cavalry cards that we can purchase in Virginia. That obviously doesn't mean it's all the cavalry we can recruit, because we can recruit a heck of a lot more, as you can see. But at least as far as Virginia is concerned, you can only recruit 2. And then I'll show you on the right here how many elements go into that unit card. So that's the second way to recruit units. And then what'll happen is after you recruit them and place them wherever you want to place them, then it takes a few turns for them to actually get the training, the troops, the resources that they need to be equipped and ready to take the battlefield. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I need to tell you about recruitment. Okay, that's right. That's what I want to tell you about. Is if you go to the specialty tab, so show other land units. These are support units that don't actually engage in battle, but provide you bonuses to your stacks. So, for example, we got a few of these guys in Beauregard's stacks. I'm going to show them to you. So now these you're not limited by region. So you basically grab a doctor and you can plunk them anywhere on the map. That allows you to build units. So I can take this medic and dump them over in the Mississippi or wherever I can build them. You're not limited in that respect. But notice here, so this engineer, for example, provides a reduction by 35% to build the next entrenchment level. And then this HQ, which is awesome, by the way. These HQs are phenomenal. They give you a plus 15% to cohesion recovery rate. They also, so they're basically like a little bit like a mini medic. They have a +1 to command points and +1 per additional level. So if this get leveled up, they can provide even more command points. And then finally, and this is pretty cool, +1 experience points to all units in the stack. So you basically can purchase these kind of cards, these specialty cards. Place them anywhere. They're a little pricey, but considering what they do, I think it's worth it. And you just plunk them in the stacks with whatever stack you have, and it provides a pretty significant bonus. So, for example, these pontoons here comes with the Pioneer, who provides a 1-point siege bonus to a whole stack this leader is in, and reduces by 10% the time necessary to obtain next entrenchment level. So, kind of like a mini engineer. And then the Pioneer bridges provide you a 50% speed bonus when crossing rivers. So you want to kind of look at these and see how they're going to fit in with your overall strategy, and then plunk them wherever you can. You can also purchase your supply trains here, as you can see under the show other land units. All right. So that's number 2 way on how to put units onto the battlefield. And number 3, which coincides with really number 2, is your reinforcement pool, or replacement pool, as I believe it's traditionally called. What this does is it takes these chits. I don't know why they're called chits, CHITS. I just call them elements because I think it's easier to track that way. Takes these reserve elements and plunks them into forces you have on the battlefield. So let's take, I know I've got a force here somewhere. This cavalry unit, the 1st Virginia Cavalry. Click on it. Notice it's got 3 black carrots and then a white carrot. So 4 total carrots, one of which is white. What does that mean? It means that this stack, or rather this card or unit, can have up to 4 elements in this unit. In order to be full, it currently only has 3. So what do we do about it? That's where your replacement pool comes in. I'm going to foot stomp something here in a moment. What that means is if you're going to take anything from this video, take that point to the bank, and I'll let you know when that moment's going to come. But notice that in here is your replacement pool, which I'll explain all these different things in a moment. And then up here are the units that you're currently recruiting that you've manually gone and plunked onto the map, or that the computer through historical events has decided it's going to build for you. So I didn't build in these ironclads. These just kind of happened. And then there's a tab you can hit. I don't know what I did, but there's some tab that'll show you in the top right how soon until it's completed. So you may have that. I normally do. I don't know what happened, but usually it's in top right. But notice that artillery battery I showed you, that 6-pound artillery in Florence, South Carolina, is sitting up here. That is telling you, when you go to F2, your war production tab, that these are all the things that the Confederacy is currently building on the battlefield. So this one right here, this one is that one. Okay? Now, replacement pool. This is where all these go into this up here. So this goes into here and goes into that cavalry I was telling you about. So how does this work? All right, let's focus on line infantry. This red is never good. You don't want red. We have 178 line infantry elements on the strategic map at the moment. So again, what are elements? Those are those things right over here. Over here. So we have 178 of these on the strategic map at the moment. We have 8 light infantry elements on the strategic map at the moment. We have 12 skirmisher elements on the map at the moment, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the number up here, if that makes sense. Also note that there's 2 of these little tab things. This one takes you to the artillery. That's right here, this little metal thing. And this takes you to your infantry, cavalry, and boats. All right. That's the top number. The bottom number here on the outside of the brackets is the number of reserve elements that you currently have awaiting a home, so to speak. So we have 19 line infantry elements waiting to go wherever they may need to be. So if we took so for example, if we went F11 and we wanted to build this Virginia Brigade here, it needs 6 elements to be fully stocked of infantry elements available in its army. Well, we've got 19, so we're good. All right, so that's where that pulls from, is that right there. So what I did notice that was concerning right before I started this video is that if you go to Florence, you go to the cavalry. What is this or artillery? What does artillery need? It's a light artillery. That L right there tells you it's a light artillery. So take from my light. I have no light artillery. Oh crap! So that means neither one of these are going to be built until I put some light artillery in here. Now you can, through the option tab, if you so choose, do automated replacements. So this basically means that it's going to, as you can see here, 5%, 10%, 15%. The AI will automatically do this for you. So it'll give you 5% of the total elements on the field, or 10% or 15%, right? I'm doing manually, so I'm not letting the AI do that for me at all. But essentially what that would do would be, we got, so good rule of thumb is 10%. We've got 12 skirmisher elements in the battlefield. Having probably 2 reserve is a good number to have. We've got 178 here, so probably a good number to have is like 15 line infantry elements available. So using the 10% number is what I like to use. It's really just up to you, whatever you think's good. Just bear in mind that if you don't have any more reserves, it's going to slow down putting units on the battlefield, because until you build those, they won't be available to go into the units that you are building. So like here, we have no light artillery reserves available because we have a 0. So we're going to go build one, which now you see it says +1. That means we're building 1 this turn. The next turn, there will be 1 available, and the turn after that is when it's going into the artillery. And then the artillery will be able to take the field. So not having any reserves available can really set you back a few turns if you're not watching it carefully. So really, like here, elite infantry, I've got 18 on the battlefield, and I have 1 reserve. That theoretically could be okay. I'll say theoretically because I'm going to show you in a moment kind of how this works in practice. And then cavalry, we got 54 elements in the battlefield, and we have 3 in reserve, so on and so forth, okay? Now, as far as cost is concerned, be aware that there's more of a cost than just purchasing the unit. So, for example, with that 6-pound artillery I bought, notice how much it costs us to build it initially. It's going to cost us 20 money, 2 conscript, and 5 war supply. Not too bad, actually, for a unit. Okay. But that's not all. When you go into your war production and you go to your replacement chits, whatever, notice that it costs us 21,000 and then 2 conscripts and 6 tons of war supply to build that reserve. So basically, these units come into play without any elements in them. And then what you need to do is you need to build those here to go into there. And I know this because I've tested it out. So I built one of these light artillery elements, and then that light artillery element went into the new artillery unit that was being built. So it's really a double cost. You don't see it when you initially buy it. This just gives you the chance to get it on the battlefield. Can't use it yet, and then you got to actually supply it. So that's how the replacement pool works. And again, you can automate it if you want. And this top number again is how many you actually have on the battlefield. And then the red just tells you that, hey, you're in trouble of not filling these elements, so to speak. Okay. Now, and then for ships, by the way, these are repair parts. As you see, repair parts are not actually elements. So they just kind of repair pre-existing elements of ships. Just point that out just to say it. I don't think it really makes a difference per se. Now, this is the foot stomp moment that I know you all were waiting with breathless anticipation for. Foot stomp, foot stomp, foot stomp. Let's take Armstead here. Okay, so we just had a battle last turn. And as you can see, Armstead's elements are red. This basically means that he's taken some hits. The sharpshooters, for example, are down to 4 out of 10 hits. Now, hits is kind of like characterized as like, life that he has remaining. And then you have obviously the cohesion. Hits and cohesion are treated the same way for purposes of replacement value. What I mean by that is that if I were to take Armstead's brigade, send it back to Winchester or Strasbourg behind enemy my friendly lines, put it into passive mode, then what would happen is that he would regain his cohesion and his hits over time. He could also do it defensively. Obviously, it would just take longer. But I don't actually have to pull from my sharpshooter reinforcement elements to get him his 6 hits back. Okay. The only time, foot stomp, foot stomp, foot stomp, the only time that you will actually be using your replacement elements here will be when the element either has not been created yet, like up here, or like 1st Virginia Cavalry, which is missing that element here. Now, he's either missing that element because it was just never created when he took the field, or it was destroyed. All right. So, going back to Armstead's brigade really quick, this sharpshooter, if this had been destroyed in the battle, in other words, it had gone 0 out of 10 hits, that would have removed him from the battlefield. And instead, what Armstead's unit would have said is 2 black carrots and then 1 white carrot. I would click it. It would tell me that this white carrot was missing an element, whatever that might be, and then I would go here, make sure I have a sharpshooter element in reserve, and then he would be reinforced with that element. Now, that's another twist, is under the options tab you can dictate how those white carrots are actually filled. What do I mean by that? You can do basically no historical attrition. You can do player-only historical attrition or both players. So what is historical attrition? Ignore this first part. The last part says units can only receive replacements if situated on depots. Okay? So that means if I wanted to replace this cavalry carrot here, or element, or whatever you want to say, Then we need to send him down to a depot. So like Manassas, for example, or Strasbourg. Put him into passive mode, and then and only then will it take from our reserves here. So we have 3 reserve cavalry currently. Only then will it take one of these 3 and plunk it into there, making him 4. All right. Now you can't say, yeah, I want that to go to 1st Virginia Cavalry. The best you can do is plunk him in a depot and put him on passive. Putting him in passive, what it does is it puts him at the front of the line for replacement elements from the reinforcement pool. But just know that the only time that you need to be using your replacement elements that are sitting in reserve is when the element has been completely destroyed. So Armstead's brigade is not going to need any replacement elements to fix the sharpshooter's strength. That's just going to recover over time like normal, unless he gets destroyed, which then will be depicted by a white caret, at which time Armstead's brigade will have to go into passive mode at a depot to replace himself. And as you can see, you go like that over the thing, and then here we get that. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't tell you what the 4th caret is. You can only assume it's cavalry, but yeah, so that's a little frustrating. You're never quite sure. That's why it's very important, I think, to always have reserves in all of your elements, just to be safe, you know. All right, one final thing on replacement pool before I conclude. Hopefully that was clear enough. I know it's complicated. It took me a little bit to understand how this worked. I think the biggest thing I didn't realize is that, hey, I don't need these if it's just some hits. The hits will recover on their own, just like cohesion. But, oh, by the way, I need these to build these. I didn't know this was connected. I thought these were 2 separate things. So, you know, I've got 2 artillery here waiting to be built, and I have no light artillery to build it, so I got to make that happen. So I actually need 2 to make that happen. But yeah, and then also, too, if you click on there and say, hey, deployed 1, information 1, enforce pool 3, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so, okay, so... Actually, this is normal artillery. That's 12-pounder. Ah. So I might actually have some 12-pounders in the field. Anyways, I told a score moment. Okay, and finally, before I conclude this video, your ships. Your ships can recover hits and elements by plunking them in a 4 or larger harbor and putting them in passive mode. So notice here, Georgia's squadron has 1 of 2 brigs currently in its unit. So there's 1, the CSS Georgia, but it can have 2. So I plunked them in Charleston, put them in passive. Now what I'm going to be doing is taking from our... We have 1 reserve part available for brigs, and so that's going to go into... repairing and bringing onto the battlefield that 2nd element. So note that's how you do it with naval vessels, is a 4 or larger harbor, and put them in passive mode, and then make sure you have some chits available, or replacement elements, or whatever you want to call them, available here to ensure that that actually happens. Because again, if you don't have anything here, this was 0-0, and there was not 1 in the reserve pool, this dude would just hang out here for eternity as a 1 element unit, because I don't have the replacement unit, or rather replacement element available. So, all right, so I hope that was helpful for you. Again, if you have any more questions on that, please let me know. If I missed something, please let me know in the comment section. And if you found this video helpful, please like it. I don't necessarily say that for my own, personal benefit. It's more so that other people can find these videos, and the only way for people to find them is, by liking and subscribing to the channel, because it raises the relevancy of that video for people who are looking for it. Given the fact that this game is a heavy lift, hopefully these videos will help you and other people more rapidly understand the game so you can start playing it. So, thank you so much for watching.